Hi, I'm Julian Croft, 32, and this happened the weekend of my brother's college graduation. The air in our family's sprawling Richmond home was thick with the scent of magnolia blossoms and anticipation. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the polished silver and the crystal glasses set for the celebratory brunch. My father was carving the glazed ham. My stepmother, Carol, was fussing with the centerpiece, and my younger brother, Liam, was beaming, trying on his cap and gown for the 10th time. It was a picture of perfect, southern fried pride. I waited for a moment of quiet, for everyone to have a mimosa in hand, their guards down. Then, I smiled, a calm, easy smile, and turned to my father. "Hey, Dad," I began, my voice light and conversational. "I was just double-checking everything for tomorrow. Has the registrar's office confirmed they shipped Liam's final diploma and the official sealed transcripts? I know they said they'd express them by the end of last week." My father and Carol exchanged a glance that was a little too quick, a little too knowing. Dad chuckled, wiping his hands on a linen napkin. "Oh, those? Yeah, they shipped them out on Monday. No need to worry your head about it, son. It's all handled." I kept my smile in place. "That's great. So they should be here today, then? For framing before the ceremony?" Carol waved a dismissive hand, her bracelets jangling. "It's all taken care of, Julian. Really. Let's just enjoy the moment." She took a sip of her mimosa, her eyes avoiding mine. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. I set my own glass down on the mantelpiece, the crystal clicking decisively against the marble. I looked at my father, then at Carol, my gaze steady and utterly calm. "So?" I said, my voice dropping, losing all its previous lightness. "I guess you still don't know whose name was actually on those documents." The room didn't just go quiet. It went dead. The refrigerator's hum ceased to exist. The chatter of birds outside the window vanished. My father's knife, halfway through a slice of ham, froze mid-air. Carol's smile shattered, the pieces falling from her face. Liam's proud posture deflated, his shoulders slumping as if the heavy wool of his gown had suddenly become lead. The name?" My father stammered, his face beginning to pale. "The name on the diploma," I repeated, my words clear and precise, each one a stone dropped into a still pond. "The name on the degree, the one I spent the last 8 years of my life and every penny of my savings paying for. It wasn't Liam's." My stepmother made a small, choked sound. Liam looked from me to our parents, his expression a mask of confusion and dawning horror. "What is he talking about? My degree is in business administration. It's done." I shook my head slowly, my eyes never leaving my father's. "No, Liam, it's not. The final semester's tuition was never paid. The outstanding balance was too high. The degree you think you earned, it was never conferred. The documents they shipped on Monday weren't a diploma. They were a final notice of withdrawal for non-payment." The silence that followed was heavier than any I had ever known. It was the sound of a family's carefully constructed world cracking down the middle. My father's face was now a ghastly shade of gray. Carol had her hand pressed to her mouth, her eyes wide with a terror that was not for Liam, but for themselves. Liam just stared, his mouth agape, the mortarboard on his head suddenly looking ridiculous. That one question, asked on a sunny morning filled with hope, turned a graduation celebration into a wake in 3 seconds flat. If you've ever dropped a single carefully aimed truth bomb in the middle of a perfect family moment and watched everything explode, I want to hear your story. Leave it in the comments below. I read every single one. And stick around until the end, because what happened after they realized I knew their secret and what I had to do to protect myself, let's just say you're going to want to see how this ends. Their faces went from pride to pure panic, and the rest of the brunch passed in a silence so profound you could hear the lies crumbling. I spent the night in my old childhood bedroom, the same room where I'd once dreamed of being an architect. The blueprints tacked to the walls were long gone, replaced by sterile, neutral art. I hadn't slept. My laptop glowed in the pre-dawn gloom, its screen filled with spreadsheets, bank statements, and the damning email chain I'd uncovered. I opened the university's student portal one more time, a futile prayer on my lips. But the result was the same, glaring back at me in unforgiving red type. Degree status, withheld. Outstanding balance, 89,450. Final transcript, hold. $89,450. Gone. Vanished. I had poured 8 years of my life into that number. Every freelance coding contract I pulled all-nighters for, every side hustle gig that consumed my weekends, every bonus and every tax return, it all flowed into the black hole of my family's expectations. While I lived in a 400-square-foot studio apartment surviving on instant coffee and discount groceries, I was funding a life for them that I couldn't even afford for myself. Liam's semester abroad in Italy, the down payment on his sports car when he turned 20, the security deposit and first year's rent on his luxury loft in the fanciest part of Richmond so he could network with the right people. The endless supplemental credit cards on my accounts that he and Carol treated like an infinite tap. I never said no. I was the reliable one, the rock, the silent banker. I thought it was my duty. 14 months ago, the cracks had started to show. Liam was at my apartment, supposedly studying for his finals. He'd passed out on my couch, exhausted from partying. His laptop was open, a low battery warning blinking. A gut feeling, a prickle of long-suppressed suspicion, made me look. I navigated to his student portal. His academic standing was a disaster zone. He was on academic probation, had been for over a year. He'd failed multiple core courses for his business degree, not once, but twice. The window to change his major to something he could actually pass, communications, without adding another full year of tuition was closing fast. He would never graduate on time, not with his current trajectory. I didn't tell a soul. Liam would have spiraled into a performative crisis. Dad would have blustered and blamed lazy professors. Carol would have twisted it into a drama about her stress and disappointment. So, I did what I always did. I managed it. Quietly. I set up a dedicated high-yield escrow account in my name only, its purpose explicitly stated. Educational expenses for Liam Croft. Final semester tuition and fees. I liquidated the small but profitable crypto portfolio I'd been building since college. I cashed out the 401k from my first salaried job, eating the early withdrawal penalty. I took on double the freelance workload, $89,550, the exact non-negotiable amount the bursar's office required to settle his outstanding balance and cover the final semester's tuition for the switched major. Because my contract work sometimes took me to remote locations with spotty internet, I had made one catastrophic error in judgment. I added a single contingency clause to the account management rules. In case of an urgent, time-sensitive academic deadline, either parent could request a direct-to-university payment with a verified phone call to my financial advisor and a follow-up email confirmation from my primary address. I included it as a fail-safe, a paranoid precaution against a scenario I never truly believed would happen. I trusted them. They used it. The records were all there. Last week, while I was in a signal dead zone in the Blue Ridge Mountains on a demanding client-server migration, Carol had called my financial advisor. She used the exact scripted language. Julian is off-grid on a critical work retreat. Liam's graduation is in immediate jeopardy. He authorized me to handle this transaction. Then, she had forwarded to my advisor an email from an address that was a masterclass in deception. julian.tech, 7agmail.com. instead of my actual julian.tech87gmail.com. The missing period was everything. The email gave full, frantic permission for the transfer. My advisor, seeing the clause, hearing the panic in Carol's voice, and glancing at the convincing email, had authorized a full, one-time transfer of the entire $89,450 directly to the university's general payment portal. A portal that, unlike a specific tuition payment, had no safeguards. Where did the money go? It never reached the bursar. It was immediately swept into the family's central account. And from there, it funded Savannah's last fling before the ring, bachelorette extravaganza in Miami. A multi-story penthouse suite at the Fontainebleau for a week, a private yacht charter for 25 people for 2 days, A surprise performance by a semi-famous DJ flown in from Las Vegas. Customized gold-plated bride tribe necklaces for a dozen bridesmaids. The open bar tab at the club alone was a 5-figure line item. I pulled up my half-sister Savannah's Instagram. The highlight reel was still there, a monument to their audacity. Her and her friends dancing on tables, sparklers in their hands, toasting with magnums of Dom Perignon on the deck of the yacht at sunset. Her grinning, flushed with victory, under a garish neon sign that read, "Last fling before the ring." She was blissfully unaware that the money funding her pre-wedding carnival was the exact sum that was supposed to secure her brother's future, to give him the credential he needed to have a life of his own. I sat there in the dark until the sun rose, painting the room in hues of orange and gold that felt like a mockery. My laptop screen went to sleep. My little brother, the same kid I used to help build Lego castles on this very carpet, was about to have his future revoked, his degree rendered null and void, because our own parents had traded it for a week of Instagram validation and mojitos. For the first time in 8 years, the constant low-grade hum of anxiety in my chest didn't spike into panic. I didn't feel the crushing weight of responsibility. I didn't even feel the white-hot burn of rage. I just felt a profound glacial coldness. A final, decisive click somewhere deep in my psyche. The well of endless giving had not just run dry, it had frozen over. And that was the morning I decided the Bank of Julian was permanently closed. The furious pounding on my apartment door came just after 11 p.m., a week later. I was expecting them. I had already changed the locks. I peered through the peephole. The distorted faces of my father, Carol, and Liam stared back, illuminated by the harsh hallway light. Dad's face was a thundercloud of entitled rage. Carol's was a mask of shrill indignation. Liam just looked lost and angry. I opened the door slowly, not speaking, just holding the frame. Carol tried to shove past me first, but I held my ground. "You canceled the automatic allowance transfer into Liam's account," she hissed, her voice trembling with fury. She brandished her phone like a weapon. "His rent check bounced. His landlord called me. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is for him?" Dad shouldered his way in, his presence filling the small foyer. "The payment for his Jeep? Declined. The bank sent a repossession notice. They're taking it in 72 hours, Julian. This is unconscionable." Liam hovered in the doorway, not meeting my eyes, scuffing his expensive sneaker on my welcome mat. "Bro, the management company for my building. They taped a notice to my door. They're starting formal eviction proceedings if I don't come up with the rent and the penalties by tomorrow. My roommates are going to kick me out. I'll have nowhere to go." I closed the door, the click of the latch sounding final. I leaned against it, crossing my arms. For the first time, their panic did not become my command. Carol's voice scaled upwards into a register only dogs could properly appreciate. "What is wrong with you? Do you have any idea the position you're putting him in? All his friends were at dinner last night and his card was declined. He's 22 years old, Julian. This is beyond humiliating." Dad jabbed a finger toward my chest, his face mottled with anger. "You do not get to make this decision unilaterally. This family's financial ecosystem depends on your support. It has since you started making real money. That is the arrangement. You stop the flow, the entire system collapses. You don't get to walk away from that." Liam finally looked up, deploying the same wounded puppy expression that had worked since he was 6 years old. "Come on, Jay. Just turn it all back on. I'll pay you back when I get the trust fund from Grandpa's estate. It's only a few months away. I promise." I looked at each of them in turn. The patriarch, the manipulator, the golden child. 8 years of financial firefighting, of quiet bailouts, of 3 a.m. Venmo transfers, so Liam wouldn't feel left out, flashed before my eyes. The semesters of tuition I'd covered so he could take a lighter course load. The deposits for Savannah's exponentially growing wedding fund. The holidays I'd worked through to afford their lavish gifts. I took a slow, deep breath, filling my lungs with the air of my own, self-funded apartment. No. The word was quiet, but it landed in the room with the force of a physical blow. Carol's jaw literally dropped. "What did you just say to me?" I said no. Not another payment, not another transfer, not another dime. No more excuses. Dad's face turned a terrifying shade of purple. "You don't have a choice in this. You've been the foundation of this family's finances since you were 24. That is your function, your role. You don't just get to resign." "My role?" I let out a short, sharp bark of a laugh. "I'm not a financial instrument. I'm not an ATM with a pulse." Liam tried again, his voice wheedling. "Bro, please. I've got 3 job interviews next week. I can't show up looking like some kind of deadbeat. Perception is reality. You know that." Carol snatched her phone back and shoved the screen so close to my face I could see the individual pixels of the overdraft alert. "Look at this. Look at what you've done. You want your brother to be homeless? Is that it? You want him sleeping on a park bench?" I didn't even glance at it. He's 22 years old. He has, or at least he should have, a college degree. He drives a car he can't afford and lives in an apartment he doesn't pay for. Those are his choices. They are not my emergencies anymore. Dad took a menacing step closer, his voice dropping to that low, venomous tone he used when I was a teenager and had truly disappointed him. "You think this is the end of it? You think we're just going to let you dismantle everything we've built? Everything we've worked for?" Carol cut in, her eyes narrowed to reptilian slits. "You have 24 hours. Reinstate every single payment. The monthly allowance, the car note, the rent, all of it. Or you are going to find out exactly how far we're willing to go to protect this family." Liam just stared at the floor, shifting his weight from foot to foot, waiting for me to fold, to make it easy, to be the predictable, reliable Julian I had always been. I pushed myself off the door, walked past them, and pulled it open wide. The cool night air from the hallway rushed in. "The 24 hours start now," I said, my voice flat and devoid of all emotion. "Get out." They stood there, frozen, as if waiting for the punchline to a joke they didn't understand. When it became clear I was deadly serious, Carol let out a sound of pure fury, snatched her designer handbag from the console table, and stormed out, muttering threats under her breath. Dad followed, pausing in the doorway to give me a look of such profound hatred it was almost impressive. Liam was the last to leave, hesitating, casting a confused, almost betrayed glance my way before shuffling out into the corridor. I shut the door. I engaged the deadbolt with a solid thunk. I slid the security chain into its track with a definitive clink, and for the first time in nearly a decade, the silence in my apartment was my own. It was not filled with the phantom vibrations of incoming demands. I stood there in the dark, my heart hammering a rhythm of liberation against my ribs, waiting for the familiar crushing wave of guilt to pull me under. It never came. Instead, a profound, unshakable calm settled over me. A thick, cream-colored envelope was waiting for me on my doorstep 2 days later when I returned from the gym. It was stiff and expensive, the kind of paper that felt like a warning. No postmark, no return address. Just my name, Julian Croft, printed in a severe, bold typeface. A chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning traced its way down my spine. I took it inside, sat at my kitchen table, and used a steak knife to slice it open neatly. The first document on top made the floor feel like it was tilting beneath my feet. Petition for appointment of guardian of the estate and person for Julian Michael Croft, filed by Gregory Croft and Carol Croft, petitioners. My vision swam for a second. I forced myself to breathe, to focus. The cover letter from their attorney, a man named Robert Vance of Vance, Sterling and Colt, was a masterpiece of legalistic manipulation. It was only 3 paragraphs long, but each one was a scalpel designed to gut my autonomy. Paragraph 1 asserted that I had, irrationally and without justification, severed all financial support to my dependent family members, demonstrating a profound and dangerous lapse in judgment and a break from reality. Paragraph 2 alleged I was exhibiting signs of severe psychological distress, including social isolation, paranoia regarding my family's finances, and erratic behavior. Paragraph 3, the coup de grace, declared me an imminent risk of dissipating my substantial assets and a clear and present danger to my own welfare. The final sentence was the trap, laid out with cynical elegance. It stated that if I signed the enclosed voluntary guardianship agreement immediately, they would limit the court proceeding to financial oversight only. If I refused, they would seek full guardianship of my person and my estate, which would grant them the power to commit me for a psychiatric evaluation, control all my medical decisions, and effectively make me a prisoner in my own life. Attached was the pre-filled voluntary agreement. A little bright yellow sticky arrow pointed directly to the blank line where my signature was supposed to go. It was a dare. I read the entire packet twice, my hands trembling so violently the paper rattled in the silent room. They had assembled a dossier of lies, statements from concerned neighbors I'd never met, claiming I had loud, raging arguments with myself late at night. A printout of my own credit report, highlighting that I'd closed all joint accounts, as if that were proof of instability. Screenshots of text messages I'd sent to Liam, telling him it was time to stand on his own 2 feet, presented as evidence of irrational hostility. There was a letter from Carol's spiritual advisor, a woman I'd met once, stating she feared for my soul because I had become cold and disconnected from the bonds of familial love. Most chillingly, they had attached a draft for an emergency ex parte order, asking a judge to freeze every single asset and account in my name before a hearing could even be scheduled. They weren't just trying to guilt me back into line. They were trying to have me declared legally incompetent and take everything from me. I felt a cold fury, clean and sharp, replace the initial shock. I picked up my phone and called the only person I knew who operated on the same level of ruthless efficiency as their lawyer, Anya Sharma, the fierce corporate litigator I'd hired once to protect a software patent. She answered on the first ring. "Julian, talk to me." I did, my voice tight but steady. I outlined the situation. "Scan and email me everything. Right now. Don't touch another thing," she commanded. 20 minutes later, my inbox chimed with her response. I opened the video call link. Her face, sharp and intelligent, filled my screen, her background a wall of legal textbooks. "Okay, I've read it," she said. "No nonsense. They're filing under Virginia Code for 64.2/2000. The law allows family members to petition for guardianship if they can provide clear and convincing evidence that you're incapacitated. This voluntary agreement is a poison pill, Julian. You sign it, you hand them the keys to your entire life, your money, your freedom, your medical decisions. Everything. If you fight it, they'll push for an emergency hearing. Judges grant temporary guardianship based on flimsy, one-sided evidence all the time, especially if the petitioners are convincingly hysterical. How strong is their case on paper?" "It's all fabricated," I said, my voice stronger now. "Every word of it." "Good. But fabricated can be persuasive if we don't dismantle it, piece by piece. We need to move faster and hit harder than they can imagine. I need you to gather every single financial record from the last 8 years. Every bank statement, every wire transfer, every Venmo, every text message thread, every email. I need a mountain of evidence proving not only that you are perfectly competent, but that they are financially exploitative and have committed fraud. This is going to get ugly, Julian. They've declared war. We're going to win it." That night, I turned my kitchen into a command center. Boxes of documents covered the floor. My scanner hummed incessantly. I created timelines, cross-referenced payments, and highlighted every instance of their greed. Every time a sliver of doubt, of that old programmed guilt, tried to insinuate itself, I would pull up the invoice for the $25,000 yacht rental, and the feeling would evaporate in a wave of righteous anger. By the time the sun rose, I had a plan. I wasn't signing their damn agreement. I wasn't negotiating. I was going to fight, and I was going to burn their entire scheme to the ground. I sealed my own envelope, thicker and heavier than theirs, and addressed it to Robert Vance, Esq. Inside was a single sheet of my own letterhead. On it, I had typed just 3 words. "See you in court." The rain was a relentless, drumming downpour, turning the streets of Richmond into shallow rivers. I'd just gotten back from a late-night grocery run, soaked and exhausted, my mind racing with legal strategies. I was fumbling for my keys when I saw it. A certified letter from my biggest, most long-term client, Harpeth Technologies, taped to my door in a plastic sleeve. A cold dread, entirely separate from the chill of the rain, seeped into my bones. I took it inside, my hands shaking as I tore it open. It wasn't just a letter. It was a guillotine. Notice of contract termination for cause. Effective immediately. My heart stopped. The reason stated, egregious breach of confidentiality and data security protocols. The letter detailed that their security team had detected multiple, sophisticated login attempts and data probes from my IP address over the past 3 weeks, coinciding with the leak of sensitive proprietary code to a competitor. An internal investigation had, they claimed, conclusively traced the activity to my home network. Attached were forensic reports, login timestamps, and IP address traces. My professional reputation, my livelihood, was being systematically dismantled, and every single piece of digital evidence pointed back to one location: the IP address of the router in my father's home office. He had a background in IT. He knew what he was doing. I was still reeling, staring at the termination notice in disbelief, when the doorbell rang. Then it turned into pounding. Heavy, official pounding. I looked through the peephole. 2 Richmond County Sheriff's deputies stood there, water streaming from the brims of their hats, their postures rigid. I opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" "Julian Croft?" the taller one asked, his voice devoid of warmth. "Yes? We have a warrant to seize all electronic devices in this residence related to an investigation into corporate espionage and data theft against Harpeth Technologies. Step aside, please." This was no longer just about money. This was about annihilation. "This is a mistake," I managed, my throat tight. "I'm the victim of a setup. The warrant is the warrant, sir. Please step aside." For the next hour, I stood helplessly in my own living room as they systematically dismantled my digital life. They boxed up my powerful desktop computer, my work laptops, my backup drives, my tablet, even my smartphone and smart home devices. They saw the personal server rack in my spare room, my passion project, and one of them called it in, stating they needed a digital forensics unit for a potential command center. As they were finally leaving, carrying boxes filled with my career, the lead deputy paused at the door. "You want to give us a name? Someone who might have a grudge? It could simplify things." A hysterical laugh bubbled in my chest. "Try my father, Gregory Croft. He's the one who filed the guardianship petition." The deputy just nodded, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "We get a lot of family disputes. Rarely this thorough." He handed me a case card. "If you can prove it, your lawyer will want this information." After their taillights disappeared into the gray curtain of rain, I didn't move. I stood in the open doorway, letting the cold, wet wind wash over me, feeling more exposed and vulnerable than I ever had in my life. They had taken my money, my family, and now they were taking my career and my freedom. I was standing in the ruins of the life I had built, ruins they had engineered. I finally closed the door, locking it, and slid down to sit on the floor, my back against the wall. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of the storm outside. The loneliness was a physical weight, crushing and absolute. There was no one coming to save me. I was the only one left on my side. I stayed there for a long time, clutching the deputy's card, its edges sharp against my palm. I had hit rock bottom, and from this cold, hard place, I knew there was only one way left to go: up, and I was going to take them down with me. A woman with a tired expression and a cheap blazer served me the official court papers in the parking lot of my local library a week later. She didn't say a word, just pressed a thick, legal-sized envelope into my hands and walked briskly away to her car. The caption on the front was a familiar nightmare: "Summons in re-guardianship of Julian Michael Croft. Hearing May 15th, 9 a.m. Courtroom 4, Richmond County Circuit Court. Presiding, the Honorable Judge Evelyn Reed." I leaned against the hood of my car, a modest used sedan I'd bought with my own money after selling the car they'd gifted me, and read the entire document in the flat, afternoon light. It listed 9 witnesses: a doctor, Eris Thorne, a psychologist who claimed he'd been treating me for narcissistic rage and delusions of persecution for 6 months. A former colleague from a project years ago who swore I'd threatened to burn the whole company down if I didn't get a promotion. 2 of Liam's friends, who provided nearly identical affidavits describing me as unhinged and verbally abusive when they asked about my sudden wealth. Every single document was notarized by the same person on the same day, all painting a meticulously crafted picture of a volatile, mentally unstable man who had capriciously destroyed his loving family and was now a danger to himself and others. The petition formally asked Judge Reed to declare me fully incapacitated, appoint my parents as my guardians, and grant them immediate power to seize all my assets, revoke my professional licenses, and have me placed in a secure therapeutic facility for my own protection. I drove straight to Anya's office, the envelope feeling like a lead weight on the passenger seat. She met me in her conference room, which looked out over the city. She spread the documents across the vast glass table, a set of multicolored highlighters in her hand like surgical tools. 9 witnesses, all coordinated. "This isn't a legal argument. It's a character assassination," she said, her voice cold and analytical. She began marking the pages. "Look, this colleague, you haven't worked with him in 3 years. These friends of Liam's, their affidavits are identical, down to a misplaced comma. This is sloppy. They got arrogant." She pulled up the Virginia Judicial Guide on her laptop. "Guardianship hearings are bench trials. Judge Reed decides everything, no jury. She's known for being no-nonsense and having a low tolerance for bullshit. If she believes even a fraction of this, she can sign the order before lunch and you'll be in a state psych facility for an evaluation by dinner." I felt the walls of the room constrict. "So how do we stop it?" "We don't just stop it, Julian," Anya said, her eyes glinting with a predatory light. She slid a massive 100-page countermotion across the table. "We eviscerate it." She had already been working tirelessly. She had subpoenaed the notary's record book, which showed all 9 affidavits were signed in a single 1-hour block. She had obtained security footage from the library coffee shop that placed me there, calm and composed, on the afternoons I was supposedly having public meltdowns. She had compiled HR records and performance reviews from all my clients, singing my praises and confirming my stability. But her masterstroke was our star witness. "The bursar from the university, Mr. David Chen, is locked in and prepared," she said, a confident smile playing on her lips. "He will testify live. He will present the entire payment history, the escrow agreement, the forged email, the bank transfer records, and the invoices for the Miami penthouse and the yacht rental. Everything. Under oath, in open court. For the first time, your parents will hear the unvarnished truth about their actions from a neutral, unimpeachable authority figure. For the next 3 weeks, I lived and breathed the case. I annotated every lie in their affidavits. I rehearsed my testimony with Anya until I could deliver it with calm, unshakable authority. I spent my weekends walking the empty, echoing hallways of the courthouse, memorizing the path from the metal detectors to courtroom 4, making the intimidating, unfamiliar space feel like my own territory, my own battlefield. I was no longer the victim. I was the plaintiff. I was the truth bringer. On the morning of May 15th, the air in Richmond was warm and heavy, the scent of blooming jasmine clinging to the courthouse steps. I wore a simple, well-tailored navy blue suit. It was armor. Inside the courtroom, it was all dark, polished wood and hushed, solemn tension. My father and Carol sat at the petitioner's table, dressed in new, stiffly formal clothes that didn't quite fit their postures. Their lawyer, Robert Vance, looked polished and nervous, constantly adjusting his cufflinks. Liam sat in the first row of the gallery behind them, wearing dark sunglasses, slouched down, trying to look detached. Judge Evelyn Reed entered. She was in her 60s, with a steely gaze and a presence that commanded immediate silence and respect. She surveyed the room, her eyes lingering on each of us for a moment before she settled behind the bench. Vance stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "Your Honor, we are here today out of nothing but love and profound concern for our son, Julian. What was once a bright, promising young man has, in recent months, become a shadow of himself, his mind turning inwards, his actions becoming erratic and hostile towards those who care for him most. Anya was on her feet before he could finish his rehearsed soliloquy. Your Honor, if it please the court, the petitioners are here today out of pure, unadulterated greed and desperation, attempting to use this honorable court to commit legalized theft and false imprisonment. We move for a directed verdict of dismissal and a criminal referral for conspiracy, perjury, and fraud. Judge Reed's sharp eyes flickered from Anya to Vance and back. I've read the witness list, counsel. Ms. Sharma, you've listed a Mr. David Chen. I'm intrigued. Call your first witness. Anya allowed herself a thin, razor-sharp smile. Thank you, Your Honor. The respondent calls Mr. David Chen, head bursar for the university. The side door to the courtroom opened, and Mr. Chen, a meticulous man in a conservative suit, walked in carrying a thick folder and a laptop. He was sworn in and took his seat in the witness box. The air in the room shifted palpably. The carefully constructed narrative my family had built began to visibly tremble. Scene pause. Narration shift. Rain began to hammer against the courthouse's tall windows, a sudden, furious summer storm that mirrored the tempest inside. I sat perfectly still at the respondent's table, my hands folded on the cool wood. Across the aisle, my parents refused to look in my direction. Liam had his arms crossed, his body angled away from everyone. Judge Reed took her seat on the bench, and the room fell into an expectant hush. Vance began again, his voice oozing a syrupy, paternalistic concern. Your Honor, if we could just... Anya stood, cutting him off cleanly. Your Honor, the petitioners are attempting a hostile takeover of my client's life through perjury and fraud. We ask for a directed verdict of dismissal. Judge Reed's gaze was like a laser. I've read the filings, Ms. Sharma. You've listed Mr. David Chen. Let's hear from him. The door opened. Mr. Chen walked in, took the oath, and sat, adjusting the microphone with calm precision. Anya began her questioning, her tone measured and respectful. Mr. Chen, could you please state your role and your familiarity with the student account of Liam Croft? I am the head bursar for the university. I have direct oversight of all student financial accounts. The account for Liam Croft had an outstanding balance of $89,450, which was preventing the release of his diploma and official transcripts, effectively withholding his degree. Vance stood. Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. This is a guardianship hearing, not a tuition dispute. Overruled, Judge Reed said without even looking at him. I'll determine the relevance. Continue, Mr. Chen. Mr. Chen opened his folder. The full amount was transferred from a dedicated escrow account owned by Mr. Julian Croft. The account was explicitly labeled for educational expenses for Liam Croft, final semester tuition and fees. The transfer was initiated after our office received a phone call from Carol Croft and a follow-up email from what was later determined to be a spoofed account, impersonating Mr. Julian Croft, authorizing the payment. Anya projected the records onto the large screen for the court to see. The escrow agreement with its clear purpose. The bank transfer confirmation. The side-by-side comparison of the fake email address and my real one. Then, she moved to the financial records Anya's private investigator had uncovered. The invoice from the Miami Yacht Company, the receipt for the Fontainebleau penthouse, the final bill for the C-list DJ, all paid from accounts directly linked to my parents, all dated within days of the tuition money being diverted. My father's face lost all its color. Carol had a hand clamped so tightly over her mouth her knuckles were white. Mr. Chen continued, his voice calm and factual. The payment cleared our general university account. However, because the funds were fraudulently obtained and diverted from their designated purpose, and the specific tuition bill remained unpaid, the degree conferral remains administratively withheld. The university considers the matter unresolved. In essence, while the university has technically been paid, the degree has not been earned, and the diploma has not, and will not, be released until this ethical and financial breach is rectified. Liam ripped off his sunglasses. What? No, that's not true. I walked. I have the cap and gown. I got the emails. Mr. Chen turned to him, his expression professionally neutral. You participated in the commencement ceremony, Mr. Croft. That is a ceremonial event. Your official diploma has not been, and will not be, printed or mailed. Any potential employer conducting a standard background check will find your degree status listed as withheld. The degree you believe you have does not, in the eyes of this institution or the wider world, exist. Liam stared, his mouth agape, his eyes wide with a horrifying, dawning comprehension. He turned to Carol, his voice a broken whisper. Mom, you said it was handled. You said you took care of it. You told me it was just a paperwork thing. Carol shut her eyes tightly, unable to face him. Anya then handed Judge Reed the stack of the 9 witness affidavits, followed by our counter-evidence. The subpoenaed notary records showing the coordinated signing, the signed recantations from 2 of Liam's friends, admitting they were paid $500 each, the IP logs from the client proving the cyber attacks originated from my father's home office. Vance tried to object again, his voice strained and weak. Your Honor, this is a fishing expedition. Counsel, sit down, Judge Reed said, her voice quiet but absolute. She read through the documents we had provided, her face an impassive mask. The only sound in the courtroom was the drumming of the rain and the rustle of pages. It felt like an eternity. Finally, she looked up, her gaze sweeping over my parents, then settling on me for a brief, unreadable moment before addressing the room. After a thorough review of the evidence presented in this petition and the respondent's counter-motion, she began, her voice clear and resonant. I find no credible basis for a finding of incapacity, not a shred. In fact, the evidence presented by the respondent paints a picture of a highly competent, responsible, and grievously wronged individual. She turned her gaze to my father and Carol, and it was like a physical force. The petition brought by Gregory and Carol Croft is not only without merit, it is a flagrant and malicious abuse of this court's process. It is built upon a foundation of perjury, conspiracy, and criminal fraud. She brought her gavel down once. Crack. The petition is denied, with prejudice. She brought it down again. Crack. The petitioners are ordered to pay all of the respondent's attorney fees and court costs. She leaned forward, her eyes like flint. Furthermore, pursuant to the Virginia Code, this entire matter, including all evidence of forged documents, fraudulent emails, and suborned perjury, is hereby referred to the Office of the Commonwealth's Attorney for immediate criminal investigation. The gallery erupted in noise. Bailiffs moved forward to restore order. Judge Reed stared straight at my parents, her voice cutting through the din. This court is adjourned. The petitioners will be escorted from the building. My father seemed to deflate, collapsing in on himself. Carol began to sob. Great, heaving sobs of shame and rage. Liam just sat there, staring blankly at the screen where the invoice for the yacht was still displayed. The boat that cost him his future. Mr. Chen stepped down from the witness stand, gave me a brief, professional nod of solidarity, and walked out. I remained seated, letting the finality of the judge's words wash over me, feeling a weight I had carried for 8 years lift from my shoulders. The war was over. I had not just won, I had been vindicated. Scene pause. Epilogue. Liam's degree never materialized. The job offers in marketing and PR evaporated when the companies could not verify his graduation. He spent months in a depressed, angry haze, blaming everyone but himself. He's now an assistant manager at a large electronics retail store, a job that doesn't require a degree, living with 2 roommates in a noisy apartment complex a world away from his former luxury loft. The relationship with our parents is a fractured, bitter thing, built on a foundation of shared resentment and blame. Dad and Carol lasted about 4 months after the hearing. The court-ordered sanctions and my 6-figure legal fees bankrupted them. They had to sell the family home, the one I grew up in, to satisfy the debt. The for sale sign went up the week after Savannah's lavish wedding, an event I did not attend. They moved into a small, rented townhouse on the outskirts of the city. I never answered a single one of their pleading or angry voicemails. The criminal investigation is ongoing. I sold my Richmond condo. I took the proceeds, paid off my remaining student loans, and bought a one-way ticket to Seattle. The Pacific Northwest was a different universe. A new tech scene, a new apartment with a view of the Puget Sound, a new phone number that was mine and mine alone. I even started introducing myself as Michael at work, my middle name, a small but powerful way to shed the skin of the person I used to be. The final walkthrough of the old family house was on a clear, crisp autumn day. The new owners, a young couple with a baby on the way, had already painted the formal front door a cheerful, sunny yellow. The living room, where that final, fateful brunch had occurred, was now a bright playroom, the heavy furniture replaced with colorful mats and toys. My old bedroom was a neutral-toned guest room. It didn't feel like my home anymore. It was just a house filled with someone else's dreams. I left the keys on the granite kitchen countertop and walked out for the last time. Standing on the porch, I took one final look at the old oak tree in the yard, the one we had a tire swing on when we were kids. Somewhere in the city, Liam was probably clocking in for another shift, his potential squandered. Somewhere in a cramped townhouse, my father and stepmother were learning the hard, unforgiving math of a life without my subsidies. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vengeful. I just felt free. A deep, profound, and peaceful freedom. I got into my car, rolled down the window, and took a deep breath of the Virginia air one last time. Then I pointed the car west, and I drove towards my own future, and I didn't look back. Here's what I know now, what I wish someone had told me when I was 24 and signed that first check, believing it was my cross to bear. Responsibility is not the same as ownership. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Family is not a cult you can't leave, and love should never come with a price tag attached. The moment you start treating someone else's perpetual emergency as your own personal debt, you are mortgaging your own future to pay for their past. If you're out there right now, draining your savings to fill a bottomless pit, covering for someone who never learned to stand on their own, propping up a perfect image that's rotting from the inside out. If you're lying awake at night, your stomach in knots, wondering how you'll make the next payment on a life that isn't yours, listen to me. You are allowed to close the bank. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to choose your own survival without wearing their guilt like a crown. Because the people who truly value you, who genuinely love you, would never have asked you to sacrifice your own dreams on the altar of their comfort in the first place. That house is someone else's home now. Those memories are someone else's problem. And I have never, ever slept more soundly in my entire life.